The day medicine lost its mind. The 427th Annual Galactic Medical Conference was, by all accounts, a colossal bore. Held in the gleaming spires of New Singapore's Interstellar Convention Center, it was the kind of event that could make a Xenian meditation monk snap from sheer monotony. Endless lectures, dry academic debates, and far too many presentations on the appropriate use of synthetic tissue adhesives. Attendees from across the galaxy floated, scurried, hovered, or slithered through the Grand Assembly Hall, each feigning intense fascination with topics like optimal tentacle hygiene and quantum antiseptic dispersion rates. In the very back row of the hall, however, one attendee was not pretending. Dr. Jack Patch Patterson, a trauma surgeon from Earth with a reputation for irreverence and miracles under pressure, lounged in his chair with his feet propped up, lazily tossing breath mints into his mouth. He hadn't even planned on attending the conference. He thought he'd be back home patching up hovercar victims or arguing with malfunctioning medical drones. But apparently, reattaching a severed arm in a zero-gravity elevator while the power was failing had earned him some galactic fame. The council had insisted he present a paper on emergency trauma procedures in gravity-variable environments. Jack had thought that whole thing was just another Tuesday. Ambassador Clix Tex, the conference's master of ceremonies and a high-ranking authority in xenomedicine, was now introducing Jack to the audience. Clix Tex looked like the unfortunate love child of a peacock and a praying mantis, complete with 4 glasses wearing appendages and an antenna that twitched when annoyed. The ambassador read Jack's introduction like someone reading aloud the terms and conditions for a galactic internet provider. And now, Clix Tex said with all the charisma of a dry sponge, "We welcome Dr. Patterson of Earth to present his paper on emergency trauma surgery in gravity-variable environments." Jack stood up, grabbed a data remote, and ambled to the podium, flashing the audience his usual crooked grin, the kind of grin that made nurses trust him with their lives, and also want to strangle him on principle. "Thanks, Ambassador," he said. "So, funny story about that elevator." The first slide popped up behind him. A full-color, high-definition image of a severed arm before and after reattachment. It was graphic. It was gory. It was effective. Several delegates visibly changed color. A few began blinking rapidly, and one species whose biology was mostly vapor quietly condensed into a puddle of alarm. "See," Jack continued casually, clicking to the next slide. "The hard part wasn't the reattachment. That was pretty straightforward. Clean the wound, realign the vessels, sew everything back together. The real challenge was managing the inflammation once the new tissue growth started." The room went dead silent. Not just quiet, horrified. The ambient hum of the climate system seemed to freeze in place. Clix Tex's antennas shot up and quivered so hard it knocked one of their glasses sideways. "I'm sorry, Doctor," the ambassador chittered. "Did you say new tissue growth?" Jack blinked. "Yeah, inflammation response kicks in, body starts regenerating cells, capillaries reform, all that. Pretty basic stuff." A wave of absolute dread washed over the assembly. Delegates looked at each other in mute panic. Some leaned away from Jack, others looked like they were preparing to flee. The floating crystal being near the front row shattered entirely in shock. Clix Tex's voice jumped several octaves. "Are you telling us that humans grow their flesh back?" "Well, yeah," Jack said slowly. "That's how we heal. What do you folks do?" "Controlled regeneration," Clix Tex nearly screamed. "Synthetic tissues, biomechanical repair units. We do not spawn flesh through uncontrolled trauma-induced responses." Jack scratched the back of his neck, glancing around. "Wait, so you guys don't use inflammation as part of your healing process?" "Of course not. That would be barbaric," another delegate hissed from the crowd. Jack squinted. "No wonder your recovery times suck." At that, Clix Tex let out a squeak that might have been fear or rage or a diplomatic seizure. The entire room erupted into chaos. Several species fainted. One delegate, composed entirely of floating light orbs, blinked out of existence altogether. Emergency translators started malfunctioning as languages overlapped in a swirl of panic. Jack just stood there at the podium, arms crossed, watching with the mildly amused expression of a man who had just realized he'd set off the galactic equivalent of a fire alarm by saying inflammation. He reached into his coat, pulled out his communicator, and casually typed out a message. "Hey Lynn, remember how you said I couldn't cause a galactic incident with a medical lecture? Yeah, about that." Meanwhile, on the other side of the convention center, Ambassador Click's Tex was being treated with universal calming agents to stop their antenna from coiling into knots. Security drones hovered nervously while emergency janitors tried to scrape the shattered remains of the crystal delegate into a containment field. One floor above, General Blurp of the Galactic Defense Force, a gelatinous mass with an ever-rippling surface and a reputation for being strategically intimidating, was watching the chaos unfold via security feed. "This is unprecedented," Blurp gurgled, his voice a nervous bubble through the translator. "In all my years of safeguarding galactic peace, never have I encountered a species that just grows back. They consider it normal," Click's Tex whispered, antenna twitching again. "They even have a term for it, healing." Blurp's mass quivered with alarm. But how do they control it? What prevents them from regenerating indefinitely? What stops them from becoming immortal? "That," Click's Tex said, "is the most terrifying part." They pulled up Jack's medical file, projecting a holographic scan of the human immune response. "They don't control it. Their bodies just do it. Autonomously, without permits, without oversight, without committee review." There was a collective gasp. A cleaning drone in the corner gave an anxious beep. "And it gets worse," Click's Tex added. "Apparently, when humans damage their muscles on purpose, they grow back stronger. They intentionally hurt themselves to enhance their own physical capabilities." "You mean," Blurp said slowly, "they've weaponized healing?" A long silence followed. Then, the head of xenobiology, a floating cluster of neural mist, finally spoke. "We must study them. Immediately, for science." "Agreed," Blurp said, his voice heavy. "But we'll need containment teams. Just in case, and sedation fields," Click's Tex muttered. "They might start regenerating, spitefully." Unseen by all, a tiny janitor drone rolled quietly across the floor. It was transmitting everything to Jack's phone in real time because it had been programmed by humans. And if there was one thing humans did almost as well as healing, it was spying with style. Flesh, fear, and a janitor's closet. Exactly 4 hours after Dr. Jack Patterson's presentation shattered every preconceived notion of human biology, a hastily assembled emergency meeting of the Galactic Medical Council took place not in the main conference chambers, which were currently being decontaminated after multiple fainting spells, but in what was technically a janitor's closet. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. With buckets of cleaning solvent shoved into corners and a confused maintenance drone beeping softly in the background, the most powerful medical minds in the galaxy huddled in a cramped space, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. General Blurp of the Galactic Defense Force, a massive, translucent, gelatinous being, took up half the room. Designed to exude an aura of commanding dread, he now looked like someone had dropped an anxiety attack into a bowl of lime gel. Every ripple across his gooey form vibrated with nervous tension. "This," he gurgled, "is unprecedented." His translator unit sputtered, trying to keep up with his fluctuating consistency. "In all my decades of interstellar security, I've never seen anything like this. A species that just grows back." Ambassador Click's Tex, still visibly rattled, nodded vigorously. Their antenna twitched involuntarily in aftershock from the earlier incident. They had already needed 3 injections of universal calming agents to keep their appendages from tying themselves into a pretzel. Still wearing a neck brace, they pulled up Dr. Patterson's galactic medical records and displayed them via hologram. "According to this," Click said, their voice sharp with disbelief, "humans not only regenerate tissue after injury they expect to. They even have a casual term for it, healing." "Barbaric," whispered a floating neural intelligence near the ceiling, who had introduced themselves as the head of xenobiology. The group fell silent as a second layer of Jack's medical data loaded. This time, the scan zoomed in on a detailed breakdown of the human immune response. Inflammation, tissue regeneration, cell proliferation. Basic human physiology. Sure, but to the assembled species, it read like some kind of self-replicating biological weapon. Our research indicates, the head of xenobiology added cautiously, that when humans experience tissue damage, they immediately trigger an aggressive inflammatory cascade, flooding the site with specialized cells that force the body to regrow itself. It's like watching an organic 3D printer, but one powered by spite. Okay, said Blurp, his voice rising in pitch, but how do they stop? What prevents them from growing new limbs? Or replacing damaged organs endlessly? What stops them from becoming immortal? They don't, Clix replied grimly. There's no oversight, no containment, no ethical review board. That last sentence caused an audible gasp or whatever the equivalent was across so many different biological structures. The floating neural entity flickered and dimmed in alarm, the janitor's closet filled with frantic whispers. That's the truly terrifying part, Clix continued. Their bodies initiate healing autonomously. There's no central control system. It's not even conscious. They get injured, and their biology just decides, time to rebuild. They don't even file a request for cell division. A beep came from the maintenance bot in the corner. It spun slightly, as if uncomfortable with the volume in the room. No one noticed it was still broadcasting a secure uplink. And worse, Clix said, voice low now, antenna drooping slightly. Some humans actually improve after being injured. The room paused. General Blurp's body lost several shades of transparency. What do you mean, improve? Clix tapped again. Another file opened this time, showing muscular adaptation in response to resistance training. They call it exercise. They intentionally damage their muscles to prompt micro-regeneration, which makes the tissue stronger. You're saying, the head of xenobiology said slowly, that they're weaponizing their own healing response. They are, Clix confirmed. They call it fitness, but let's be clear. They're cultivating strength through controlled trauma. They're teaching their biology to strike back harder. The janitor bot emitted a mechanical shudder. This is a clear threat to galactic security, Blurp announced, his bulk quivering with indignation. We must initiate containment protocols. This cannot go unmonitored. Wait, said the head of xenobiology, flickering with cautious intrigue. Let's not act rashly. We should study them first, monitor their healing behavior, understand what makes them tick. For the sake of science, of course. Science, Blurp echoed, though the tension in his mask suggested he was picturing blast shields and riot squads. We'll need close observation, the neural mist added. Routine biological sampling, some controlled injuries for data collection. Perhaps a designated subject, suggested Clix, Dr. Patterson, for example. His medical record states he once performed a 7-hour surgery with 3 fractured fingers and, quote, walked it off. Another beep came from the drone. This time, it sounded vaguely impressed. Very well, said Blurp. We'll begin with surveillance, observations. Strictly scientific. Containment fields, Clix added. Shock troops muttered the neural mist. Peer review, everyone said in unison. And perhaps, Blurp said, trying to reassert his command tone, someone can check if humans can grow back their heads. There was a bee of silence. Let's not find out, someone finally whispered. Just then, Clix attempted to leave the closet only to realize Blurp's expanding form had partially blocked the doorway. The ambassador poked the gelatinous wall with an upper appendage. Could you? Excuse me, General. You've stress expanded. Apologies, Blurp said in a mortified gurgle. It happens when I panic. As the various delegates awkwardly squeezed past the half-transparent general, no one noticed the janitor bot finishing its upload. The encrypted transmission was complete. Back on Earth, Dr. Jack Patterson's phone buzzed once. He glanced down at the notification and smirked. Message received, he muttered. Back at New Singapore General Hospital, the emergency department was as usual utter chaos. 3 hovercar pileups, a tourist who tried interspecies street food, and a malfunctioning gravity field generator had turned the trauma ward into a triage obstacle course. Jack strolled through it all like it was a pleasant walk in the park. He sipped his coffee black, scalding and brewed with beans so strong they were probably banned in 3-star systems. Nurse Lynn Bandit-Rodriguez handed him a patient chart with one hand while smacking a medical drone away from her face with a clipboard in the other. "By the way," she said, "we've got observers." "Aliens?" Jack asked, already guessing the answer. "3 of them. They're trying to blend in, but one's literally a floating blob of anxiety and another forgot to maintain their holographic disguise. Pretty sure I saw antenna poking through their bangs." Jack took another sip of coffee, eyes twinkling. "Well, that didn't take long." "Want to mess with them?" Lynn asked, already grinning. "Oh," Jack said, voice warm with mischief. "I thought you'd never ask. Coffee, chaos, and a supply closet." The break room at New Singapore General Hospital wasn't exactly glamorous. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt toast. The lights flickered just enough to be annoying, and the vending machine had a long-standing grudge against anyone trying to get actual food. But for Dr. Jack Patterson and Nurse Lynn Band-Aid Rodriguez, it was the stage for something far more entertaining than a coffee break. It was about to become ground zero for what the staff affectionately called Operation Freak Out the Aliens. It all started with a quiet warning. "They've been watching since the morning shift," Lynn said, handing Jack a steaming cup of Earth-grade coffee strong enough to double as paint remover. "3 of them. One's a jellyfish in a trench coat. Another keeps glitching their hologram disguise. Pretty sure I saw antennas sticking out of their hair. And the 3rd one? I think it's pretending to be a potted plant." Jack took a long, satisfied sip, already grinning. "Let me guess. They flinched when I popped my thumb back in during that Hawkar trauma case." "Crystalline 1 almost shattered," Lynn confirmed. "You made it click. Excellent," Jack muttered. "Time for a little educational theater." Lynn arched an eyebrow. "We're putting on a show." "We're putting on a clinic," Jack said. "Let's give them exactly what they came for, an up-close look at typical human healing." Within 15 minutes, the hospital staff had been discreetly alerted. Code phrases like maximum human authenticity and don't hold back on the weird circulated across departments. Even Dr. Ramirez, still limping from a self-proclaimed fitness mishap, got in on it, loudly recounting the time he walked off a broken toe after dropping a diagnostic scanner on his foot. An intern demonstrated their healing speed by dramatically showing off a paper cut from an hour ago. The potted plant observer twitched. Everything was in place. Jack and Lynn set up in the break room, strategically close to Supply Closet B, which, thanks to some suspiciously new tech panels, was now the aliens' primary observation post. Jack poured himself another cup of near-toxic coffee and raised his voice just enough to carry. "You know, Lynn, I really do appreciate our advanced healing response," he said, as if casually reflecting on the weather. "Makes the job a lot easier." "Oh, totally," Lynn chimed in. "Remember that guy last week? Fractured radius, needed a cast, and just a bit of inflammation encouragement? Good as new in days. Classic case of enhanced tissue regeneration." Jack nodded, taking a slow sip. "Not as impressive as that time I regrew those fingernails after the liquid nitrogen spill," Lynn added, deadpan. A sharp squeak came from inside the supply closet. Jack smirked, eyes dancing with mischief. "Still doesn't top my 4th finger. That airlock incident? Thing grew back in record time." From inside the closet came a thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of multiple alien life forms collapsing in synchronized panic. Lynn leaned in, whispering, "Should we tell them that was a lie?" "Nah," Jack replied, eyes never leaving the closet door. "But watch this." He reached for the coffee pot again, making sure his movements were visible. "You know what really kicks our healing into overdrive?" he said loudly. "This stuff. Pure concentrated cellular stimulant. We call it coffee. Short for coefficient of flesh enhancement," Lynn added smoothly. That did it. The supply closet door burst open as General Blurp, no longer bothering with any disguise, oozed into the room, panic rippling through his translucent form. "They have a regeneration enhancement serum," he he shrieked. Code red. I repeat, code red. Click text stumbled out behind him, hologram flickering wildly between their actual alien form and what appeared to be a teen pop star. The humans are weaponizing their healing. They're becoming unstoppable. The third observer, indeed a disguised plant, tried to flee, but tripped over its own decorative leaves and rolled helplessly into a janitor's cart. Jack calmly took another sip. Think we overdid it? Lynn shrugged and began typing a hospital-wide alert. Operation Freakout is over. Stand down. She paused, glanced at Jack. Though you might want to check your phone. Jack did. His communicator blinked with multiple messages. Oh, this is Rich. General Blurp just triggered an emergency alert to the Galactic Security Council. We've officially been labeled as a regenerating threat to galactic stability. Lynn spit laughed into her clipboard. You've really done it now. Jack grinned. So what's next? I think it's time we leaned in, she said. Let's show them what human recovery really looks like. By late afternoon, the containment team arrived. They didn't knock. They barged into the hospital looking like a cross between a sci-fi SWAT team and a bad fever dream, tentacled suits, glowing visors, and enough scanning gear to accidentally trigger a black hole. Jack was mid-bite, attempting to break his own record for marshmallows caught in his mouth when the leader addressed him. Dr. Jack Patterson, said a modulated voice that could have passed for a malfunctioning blender. You are to be detained for study regarding your dangerous regenerative capabilities. Jack blinked. Bad timing. I'm 3 marshmallows from beating Dr. Chen's record. Do not resist, the officer warned. We are authorized to use anti-regeneration countermeasures. Jack raised an eyebrow. Those exist? No. But we hoped you wouldn't know that. Just then, Lynn kicked the door open, wielding her clipboard like a holy relic. Jack, we've got a situation. Oh, you met our new friends. Just explaining the marshmallow thing, Jack said, casually entering another vending code. The one that caused the Great Sugar Rush incident of 2073. That's the one. Lynn raised her chin. You sure you want to relive the Gecko Ward fallout? The containment leader made a sound of pure exasperation. This is serious. You are a biological hazard. Lynn cut in. Quick question. Did anyone actually study human biology before you planned this mission? Of course, the leader snapped. We know all about your enhancement serum, rapid tissue growth, limb regrowth. Jack interrupted. We can't regrow limbs. That arm I reattached. That was surgery. If we could grow limbs, I would have gone home early. There was a long silence. But the coffee? It's just bean juice, Lynn said, now laughing. Makes us jittery, maybe annoying, but that's it. Jack shrugged. The inflammation response, the muscle adaptation, that's all natural human biology. Nothing supernatural, just a little aggressive maintenance. The team huddled together, whispering rapidly. It was dawning on them that they might have launched a full-blown operation over some highly convincing nonsense. That's when the vending machine finally responded. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Packages of marshmallows poured out onto the floor like confetti from a cosmic prank god. Lynn stared. You hit the jackpot. Run, Jack offered. Run, Lynn agreed. They bolted, laughing like children. Behind them, armored aliens slipped and crashed on marshmallow drifts. Pediatric patients seeing the chaos joined in pelting containment agents with stuffed animals. Medical staff cheered from behind counters. Someone started playing music. By the time the chase ended in the cafeteria, where General Blorp slipped on Jell-O and crashed into a dessert cart, Jack and Lynn stood at the door, grinning like lunatics. Should we tell them inflammation is just efficient biology? Lynn asked. Nah, Jack replied, catching another marshmallow in his mouth. Let them keep thinking we're regenerating death machines. It's more fun that way. Containment, confessions, and the marshmallow incident. By the time Dr. Jack Patterson returned to his office, still buzzing with post-marshmallow adrenaline, the containment team had cordoned off half the hospital. Not subtly either. Giant armored figures stood awkwardly near the vending machines, their glowing visors tracking every human staff member like a bunch of overzealous mall cops. And the worst part? Jack hadn't even broken the marshmallow record yet. He was halfway through planning a second attempt, strategizing angles, practicing launches, when a voice cut through the hallway speakers with bureaucratic dread. "Dr. Jack Patterson, you are hereby ordered by the Galactic Security Council to submit to medical containment for further study." Jack glanced down at his still slightly sugar-dusted hands. "Okay," he muttered. "This has officially gone interplanetary." He turned slowly to face a line of armored beings, each wearing what appeared to be multi-layered, regenerative-resistant suits that looked both unnecessarily high-tech and tragically uncomfortable. One of them, the leader by default, or just the one with the most antennae, held a scanning device shaped like a terrified squid. "Please do not resist," the voice said again. "We are equipped with anti-regeneration measures." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You're bluffing." There was a pause. The lead officer shifted slightly. Correct. Before anyone could respond, Lynn burst into the hallway like a one-woman cavalry unit, clipboard raised high like it was blessed by every nurse union in the galaxy. "What's going on here?" she barked. "They're here to contain me," Jack replied, gesturing vaguely. "Apparently for being a biohazard." Lynn looked to the containment team up and down. "Did you even read our medical profiles?" "Of course," the lead officer said, slightly indignant. "Your species drinks regeneration fluid, grows back flesh, and repairs itself in the midst of combat. You regrew fingernails, reattached limbs, walked off skeletal trauma." "Okay," Jack said, pointing. "Let's break that down. The fingernails, normal. The limb, reattached. As in surgery. If I could grow arms, I'd be on vacation." "And the coffee?" another officer asked, visor twitching. "Is just coffee," Lent said. "Though the break room blend might qualify as chemical warfare in certain systems." A confused silence followed. "But the inflammation response?" one officer asked quietly. "Basic biology," Jack said. "Our immune systems go into overdrive to clean and repair damage. You all use synthetic replacement. We just make our own parts. And the exercise," someone whispered. "You injure yourselves on purpose." Jack chuckled. "That's just gym culture. Heard it so it grows back stronger. It's stupid, but it works." The officers looked at each other, visibly deflating. One even lowered their scanning tentacle. "But General Blurp said you were regenerating death machines," Lynn snorted. "General Blurp also once asked if humans photosynthesize because we need vitamin D. Take that with a grain of salt." Another silence. This time, awkward and long. Then came the vending machine. Thunk, 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 thunk. It began dispensing a fresh avalanche of marshmallow packets, Jack's earlier code finally catching up. The leader's armor let out a noise like a whimpering door hinge. "Run," Jack suggested again. "Run," Lynn agreed. What followed would go down in hospital lore. Jack and Lynn took off down the hall, flinging marshmallow packets behind them like confetti. The containment team, clearly not trained in navigating a pediatric ward littered with squishy sugar bombs, gave chase, slipping, crashing, and in one case, being ambushed by a 6-year-old wielding a plush octopus. They barreled through the rehabilitation center. Patients stared, bemused, and past the pharmacy, where Dr. Chen took one look and calmly dove under his desk. The pursuit reached its absurd crescendo in the cafeteria, where a stray marshmallow sent the team's leader skidding straight into a cart of Jell-O cups. The resulting impact created what would later be described in reports as a tactical dessert detonation. Jack stood in the doorway, hands on hips. "Think we should tell them the truth now?" "Nah," Lynn said, recording the chaos with her phone. "Let them stew in it a little longer." The diplomatic fallout was inevitable. Ambassador Helen Hell No Martinez arrived by the next morning, flanked by a task force of tired-looking aides and a headache visible from orbit. She had the kind of presence that made entire galactic councils apologize for breathing too loudly. Jack, seated at the head of the conference room table, still wearing a marshmallow-streaked coat, tried to look innocent. It didn't work. "Let me get this straight," Martinez said, voice flat as a defibrillator paddle. "You told them coffee was a regeneration serum." "In my defense," Jack said, "they already thought we were monsters. I just gave them a fun name for it." "And the marshmallow incident?" "Opportunistic improvisation." Lynn, seated nearby, raised her hand. "If it helps, the video of the containment team falling into the Jell-O hit 6 million views on GalacTube." "It does not," Martinez replied, not missing a beat. Just then, General Blurp oozed into the room, still recovering from the dessert explosion. Ambassador Click's Tex followed, wearing a melted hologram disguise that flickered between panicked alien and confused teen celebrity. "This is unacceptable," Blurp boomed. "The humans have weaponized their food supplies." Martinez held up a hand. The room went silent. "Perhaps," she said with a smile that could make black holes blink, "we should discuss this calmly. Over dinner. Somewhere neutral." That's how they ended up at Taste of the Galaxy, New Singapore's top-rated multi-species restaurant, seated awkwardly around a table filled with appetizers and diplomatic tension. Jack gestured with a breadstick. "Look, our healing is just basic biochemistry. We get hurt, our immune systems jump in, inflammation happens, tissues rebuild. No magic. Just aggressive maintenance." "The coffee?" Blurp asked, still watching Jack's cup like it might explode. "Just a stimulant," Lynn said. "It wakes us up, occasionally makes us vibrate. That's it." "And exercise," Clix pressed. "You intentionally damage muscle fibers." Jack nodded. "Yep, makes them grow back stronger, dumb but efficient. And no, we're not trying to become immortal. Just look good at the beach." The silence was thick. Then Martinez, smiling too pleasantly, turned to Jack. "Would you mind demonstrating?" Jack froze. "Demonstrating what?" "Human healing," she said sweetly. "A minor paper cut, perhaps." Clix gasped. Blurp rippled in horror. One of the waitstaff dropped a tray. Jack sighed and picked up a menu. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Immensely," she said. With a dramatic flair, Jack dragged the paper edge across his finger. It was a tiny nick, barely more than a scratch, but the reaction, pure panic. Blurp turned several shades of chartreuse. Click's Tex's antennae tied themselves into knots. One delegate from across the room fainted into their soup. "See?" Jack said, holding up the tiny cut. "Give it a day or two. Good as new." "No serum?" Blurp asked in disbelief. "Nope. And the marshmallows. Pure chaos. Though I did break the hospital record." Lynn raised her glass. "To angry human flesh and tactical desserts." Martinez clinked her glass. "And to never bringing containment teams into hospitals again." Blurp sighed like a deflating balloon. By the following week, the Galactic Council had officially reclassified humans as unusual, but not a threat. A small footnote warned of possible confectionery-based confusion. Jack's presentation became a mandatory case study in xenodiplomatic relations. The marshmallow incident went viral, and the hospital gift shop began selling shirts that read, "I survived the great human containment catastrophe, and all I got was this t-shirt, and maybe diabetes." And as for Jack and Lynn, back to the ear where they belonged, ready for the next accident, the next alien, the next misunderstanding. Because for humans, healing wasn't just science, it was a lifestyle. And sometimes it was a performance, the paper cut that broke the galaxy. The emergency session of the Galactic Council wasn't just packed, it was a full-on cosmic spectacle. Delegates from every known corner of the galaxy had arrived in droves, crowding the assembly hall with tentacles, wings, plasma forms, and beings that looked like they had been designed by a sleep-deprived artist with a jelly obsession. The reason? A human doctor named Jack Patterson, who had inadvertently triggered the largest interstellar medical panic since the discovery of allergic reactions to neutron synth cream. Now, Jack stood at the center podium, wearing his usual rumpled coat, arms crossed, and a smile just a little too relaxed for someone who'd been labeled a galactic biohazard 48 hours earlier. In the front row, Nurse Lynn Rodriguez sat with her phone out recording. Of course, because, as she put it, some moments deserve to be immortalized, preferably with subtitles. "Distinguished delegates," Jack began, his voice echoing slightly through the grand chamber. "I'm here to clear up a few misunderstandings about human biology. Mainly, that we are not, I repeat, not, regenerating death machines." A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the room. "Though," he added with a grin, "that would make a great movie title." A few delegates, particularly those who had witnessed the now infamous marshmallow incident, visibly shifted in their seats, or however you describe movement in a species that slithers across the ceiling. "Let's address some rumors," Jack said, tapping his data tablet. Behind him, a holographic display lit up with bullet points. "No, we cannot regrow limbs. Yes. Coffee is just a beverage, albeit one strong enough to qualify as jet fuel in some systems. And no, General Blurp, we do not photosynthesize." From within his sealed containment field in the back of the chamber, General Blurp made a bubbling sound of indignation. His form pulsed with what might have been embarrassment. "We heal differently, yes," Jack continued. "But it's not sorcery or secret tech. It's just our bodies doing what they evolved to do. When we're injured, we trigger an inflammation response. That brings immune cells to the site, clears out the damage, and starts repairs." He paused as the hologram zoomed in on a human body's microscopic healing process. Colorful animations of white blood cells, platelets, and fibrous tissue danced in scientific harmony. "Think of it as a very determined renovation crew," Jack added. "One that doesn't ask for approval before it knocks down a wall." A few chuckles. Mostly from the species with construction-based biology. "But what about exercise?" someone called from the back. "You deliberately injure your own muscles." Jack nodded. "Yup. We break ourselves to grow stronger. Welcome to the gym." Another ripple of discomfort passed through the audience. An ambassador from a liquid-based civilization shuddered visibly. "We don't do it to become invincible," Jack clarified. "We do it because we adapt to stress. Physical, environmental, emotional. It's how humans survive, and sometimes it's how we thrive." Behind him, the holo display flipped to a graph showing muscle growth after repeated resistance training. "See? Just adaptation. Nothing magical. Just our bodies saying, 'Oh, you want to lift heavy things? Sure, let me make myself tougher so you don't drop it on your foot next time.'" There was a pause as a dozen translators caught up with the sarcasm. "And for the record," Jack added, "no one has grown a new head. Yet. From the front row, Lynn whispered, "Yet," loudly enough for the recording mic to catch. The delegates collectively stiffened. "I'm kidding," Jack said quickly, hands raised. "That was a joke, I promise. It's not even in testing." General Blurp shifted nervously inside his field. "The real point is this," Jack said, turning serious. "Humans aren't special. We're not a threat. We just heal through different mechanisms than most galactic species. That doesn't make us dangerous. It just makes us interesting." A long pause followed. Then, from her seat off to the side, Ambassador Martinez stood. "As enlightening as this is," she said coolly, "perhaps a demonstration would help solidify this understanding." Jack's eyes narrowed. "You want me to do what now?" "A small injury," she replied sweetly. "To show them how your healing works, something minimal, like a paper cut." The council exploded in panic. "You want him to deliberately injure himself?" Clicks Tex's translator screeched. "In public? Without committee approval?" "It's just a paper cut," Jack muttered. Lynn handed him a menu. Jack looked at it, then at the audience. "This," he said, holding it up, "is paper. It's sharp if you're clumsy. Watch closely." He slowly dragged the edge across his index finger, leaving a tiny pink line. Immediately, all hell broke loose. Ambassadors gasped. Tentacles recoiled. One delegate's translator began speaking in tongues. Blurp's containment field brightened as he cycled through 7 shades of translucent panic. The inflammation is already beginning, someone screamed. His flesh is angry, cried another. That, Lynn whispered through giggles, should be a band name. Jack held up the finger. In a few days, this will be gone. No serum, no surgery, just biology doing what it's supposed to do. You're saying? An Enderan delegate croaked. This is normal. For humans? Yeah, Jack said. You should see what we do with broken bones. No, thank you, 3 delegates said in unison. The chaos gradually settled into a stunned silence. Jack looked around the hall. So, are we still considered a threat? Blurp cleared his throat, if that's what you called it, when Jelly jiggled with authority. Perhaps. We may have overreacted. Perhaps, Martinez echoed, her voice dripping with diplomatic amusement. Click's texts, now fully unraveling their antenna from an accidental knot, nodded. Still, you must admit, growing tissue through inflammation is rather unsettling, says the species that photosynthesizes bandages, Lynn muttered under her breath. Jack's communicator buzzed. He glanced at it and chuckled. Well, good news. The marshmallow incident has officially been picked up by the Galactic News Network. They're calling it the Great Human Containment Catastrophe of 2074. Blurp deflated, oddly. Martinez grinned. Perhaps we should discuss terms. For keeping this quiet? Oh, I think we can work something out, Jack said. But first, who's ready for dessert? The entire hall groaned. Jell-O? Lynn offered, not helping. Trauma pudding, someone whispered. The final vote passed unanimously. Humans were reclassified as unusual but not dangerous, though a subclause was added warning against possible weaponized confections. The medical file on Dr. Patterson was sealed, and any future research involving human coffee consumption required at least one therapist on standby. Back on Earth, New Singapore General Hospital returned to business as usual, by which we mean mild chaos flavored with caffeine and sarcasm. Alien medical students began shadowing our staff, wide-eyed and terrified every time someone mentioned inflammation. And Jack? He kept a scorecard on his desk. So far, 7 fainted during suture demos, 3 during blood draws, and 1 after watching him jog to catch a sandwich delivery. Lynn sipped her coffee. Think they're ready for how we treat fevers? Jack grinned. Let's save that for next year's conference. I've got a new paper in the works. Sweating. The Violent Art of Thermoregulation. A new galactic diagnosis. Human. Weird. Not dangerous. The aftermath of the great human healing hysteria echoed across the galaxy like a cautionary tale wrapped in absurdity. For weeks, the incident was all anyone could talk about. News feeds replayed footage of containment teams crashing into hospital carts, alien diplomats passing out over paper cuts, and General Blurp's gelatinous meltdown during the Gel-O catastrophe. And yet, amid all the chaos, something remarkable had happened. The galactic community had started learning. At first, the learning looked suspiciously like damage control. Posters went up across hospitals and academic centers with bold titles like Understanding Humans, a quick reference guide, and coffee, not a serum, just bean juice. Several species formed task forces specifically to study human biology out of both fear and morbid curiosity. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Jack Patterson remained as unfazed as ever. One afternoon, just days after his infamous paper cut demonstration, he was walking through the main lobby of New Singapore General when he noticed something unusual. A group of alien medical interns stood huddled in front of a chart of the human lymphatic system, whispering in hushed tones as if they were planning a heist. Jack stopped and cleared his throat. You know, that one's just our immune highways. No, they don't carry weapons. Yes, they light up when we get sick. And no, he added, pointing at a particularly nervous intern, you can't hear them if you concentrate hard enough. The group scattered like startled pigeons, save for one bold soul who timidly raised a pseudopod. Dr. Patterson, is it true that human children fall down repeatedly as a form of growth development? Jack blinked. You mean toddlers? The intern nodded, quivering slightly. Jack grinned. Yeah, We call it learning to walk. It's kind of a rite of passage. Fall down, cry, stand up, repeat. The alien shuddered. That sounds barbaric. That's the word of the year, apparently, Jack muttered as he walked off. Inside the staff break room, Lynn Rodriguez was watching the latest Galactube feature, a 30-minute dramatization titled The Human That Couldn't Be Contained. The actress playing her had 6 arms and the emotional range of a grapefruit, but the resemblance was oddly flattering. They gave you tentacles, Jack commented, leaning over her shoulder. I know, Lynn sighed. And the worst part? I like it. The video cut to a scene where Jack, or at least his overly muscled cape-wearing alien counterpart, punched a containment drone into a wall while shouting, "You'll never cage the flesh." Jack choked on his coffee. Okay, that's new. We've become pop culture icons, Lynn said, deadpan. There's merch. Someone made marshmallow-shaped plushies with your face on them. Should I be honored or horrified? Both. They shared a laugh until Nurse Shelley poked her head in. Hey, Jack. There's someone here from the Galactic Medical Academy. Wants to shadow your shift. Again, Jack groaned. Yep, nervous-looking thing with a clipboard and 3 hearts. Perfect, he muttered. I love when my patients get treated and watched like a science exhibit. Later that day, during an abdominal suturing procedure, Jack noticed the intern quietly inching toward the supply table with what could only be described as reverent horror. You okay there? Jack asked without looking up. Yes, doctor. Just observing. But how do you know where to stitch? You don't consult a neural consensus. There's no committee approval. Jack tied off the thread and shrugged. Nope. We go off training, instinct, and sometimes caffeine. That's how you get through a 10-hour trauma shift. The interns scribbled frantically in their notes. Humans rely on intuition during organ repairs. Confirmed. Across the room, Lynn added, also sarcasm. It helps the wounds close faster. The intern froze mid-sentence. That's a joke, Jack said quickly. Please don't add sarcasm to your medical treatment protocols. By week's end, the galaxy's attitude toward humans had shifted from full-blown panic to cautious fascination. The official ruling from the Galactic Council was made public. Humans are to be classified as biologically unusual, but not inherently dangerous. Their healing processes, while aggressive, do not constitute a threat under current containment protocols. Caution is still advised when interpreting cultural metaphors and dietary habits. Jack framed a printed copy and hung it in the ear next to the Employee of the Month photo, featuring a cleaning drone that once stopped a coffee spill with its body. Lynn rolled her eyes when she saw it. You're proud of this? Absolutely. We went from and contain them immediately to just keep an eye on them. That's progress. The real surprise, however, came from the medical community itself. Suddenly, researchers from across the galaxy were interested in the human immune system, not because they feared it, but because they admired it. A delegation of Valthari biologists, a species known for literally crystallizing under stress, requested collaboration on pain response studies. A symposium was announced to explore Earth-based inflammation models as alternatives to synthetic regeneration techniques. And someone even proposed a joint human-alien fitness program, though the idea of teaching squishy photosynthetic beings how to bench press was still being debated. And then there were the jokes. Oh no, he's regenerating. Became a running gag across every hospital Jack visited. Cafeterias renamed strong coffee as regeneration fuel. Marshmallows? Now sold as containment deterrents. Even Jack's next lecture tour had been unofficially branded. The Flesh is Willing, a human's guide to not dying so easily. One morning, Jack stepped out of surgery to find General Blurp waiting for him in the hallway, still gooey, still grumpy, but less jiggly with dread than before. Dr. Patterson, the general said. I'm here for a follow-up. Jack blinked. Follow-up? You're not hurt, are you? No. I watched your presentation again, twice. And I wanted to confirm, the coffee was not real medicine. Nope. And you don't grow new heads. Definitely not. blurb shifted. Then why? Why did you let us believe it? Jack shrugged. Because no one ever gets to prank the galaxy. The general blinked slowly. Then, to Jack's utter surprise, let out a low, gelatinous chuckle. I see, he said. Well played, human. Jack grinned. Want a marshmallow? The general recoiled. Absolutely not. Back in the break room, Lynn was already uploading another video to GalacTube, this one titled Alien Intern Tries to Understand a Fever. It featured a panicked alien huddling next to a heat lamp, trying to match frequency with human internal combustion. Is it wrong to profit from interstellar ignorance? She asked. Yes, Jack replied. But it's also deeply satisfying. They clinked coffee mugs, and so life returned to something close to normal. There were still misunderstandings, still strange looks whenever Jack cracked a knuckle or someone mentioned immune responses, but there was also respect, curiosity, even collaboration. For the first time in history, humans weren't just the unpredictable species at the bottom of the evolutionary food chain. They were survivors, fighters, weirdos with coffee addictions and stubborn biology, and somehow, that earned them a seat at the medical table of the stars, which, Jack decided, was exactly where they belonged. Welcome to the galaxy's weirdest. By now, the galaxy had mostly accepted that humans weren't interstellar threats. Baffling, resilient, adaptable, bizarrely enthusiastic about things like pain tolerance and hot drinks, but not dangerous. Well, not intentionally, probably. At New Singapore General Hospital, the emergency department adjusted to the new normal with ease. After all, chaos had always been part of the job. Now it just involved more species, more translators, and a lot more questions about why Earthlings insisted on letting their bodies fix themselves. Dr. Jack Patterson, freshly cleared of any accusations involving regenerative warfare, resumed his usual routine: fast stitching, fast coffee, and faster sarcasm. Only now, he had an audience alien observers who arrived daily in rotating shifts, some pretending to be potted plants, others in less convincing holograms that glitched every time someone sneezed. The air had become a live-action exhibit. Jack, as always, leaned into it. One afternoon, he was finishing up sutures on a hover scooter accident victim when he noticed the new batch of alien interns huddled in the observation corner, eyes or equivalent sensory units wide with fascination. Okay, he said without looking up. Someone explain why 4 of you are vibrating. They do not use stabilizers, murmured a jellyfish-shaped observer. He inserts needles directly into the epidermis. Another delegate, shaped like a cluster of cubes, gasped. Without anesthetic filtration, he trusts the immune system. Jack tied the last knot and looked up. Do your people not trust their immune systems? We submit it to oversight committees, the jellyfish replied. Jack chuckled and handed the nurse the chart. You guys have a lot of forms, huh? Lynn Rodriguez walked in just as the cube being fainted into a rolling trash bin. We're up to what, 12 collapses this week? She asked, glancing at Jack. 14, he said. Someone passed out when I cracked my neck. Another keeled over when I sneezed and said it felt great. Lynn winced. Yeah, they're still not ready for that kind of raw human experience. Later that day, in the hospital cafeteria, which now stocked a surprisingly popular Jell-O bar as a tongue-in-cheek tribute to the incident, Jack and Lynn sat eating lunch while pretending not to notice the surveillance drones hovering at a respectful but creepy distance. They've started keeping stats, Lynn said between bites of noodles. Stats? On you, the Galactic Council. Jack raised an eyebrow. Please tell me it's something important like number of successful surgeries or survival rates. Nope, Lynn said. They're tracking how many aliens faint while watching you work. Jack groaned. Please tell me I'm not on a leaderboard. You are, she said, trying not to smile. You're in the top 3 for medically induced existential crises. The only reason you're not number 1 is because some guy from Alpha Lyra tried to replicate an appendectomy on himself after watching your lecture. That's not even impressive, Jack muttered. I only made the video because Martinez said I needed to de-escalate tensions. Lynn leaned in, smirking. And then you ended it by saying, I dare someone to show me a better immune response, which was technically accurate. It was also followed by 38 diplomatic calls and a galaxy-wide fever about angry human flesh. Fair point. They sat in silence for a moment as a trade drone wheeled by carrying something that looked suspiciously like fluorescent soup. Jack eyed it warily. You ever wonder if we're the weird ones? He asked. Lynn didn't hesitate. We absolutely are. But that's the fun part. Outside the cafeteria, the hospital's gift shop had fully embraced the hype. The window display now featured mugs that read, I heal because I must, t-shirts with Jack's face on a marshmallow, and little plush toys shaped like inflamed white blood cells. There was even a coloring book titled The Incredible Human Immune System. Now, with more panic, Jack tried not to let it go to his head. But when he saw a group of alien tourists taking selfies next to a cardboard cutout of him holding a coffee cup and giving a thumbs up, he sighed. We've officially crossed into mascot territory, he said to Lynn. Yup, she replied. And you're the poster child for stubborn biology and caffeine addiction. I've always dreamed of being known across the stars for my white blood cells. Hey, at least you're not the guy who got tackled by a containment officer because he sneezed near a vat of regeneration serum. That happened? Yup. Yesterday, they're calling it the sniffle scare. Despite the chaos, something real began to take shape underneath the comedy and viral fame. Medical collaborations started, research teams formed. Species that had once viewed humans as terrifying biological anomalies began asking questions instead of running away. One group of Andoran medics developed a training simulator based on Jack's emergency room habits, complete with randomized chaos, time pressures, and caffeine breaks. Another group of xenosurgeons adapted Earth-style suture methods to treat high-pressure aquatic injuries on their home world, crediting that weird Earth guy with saving dozens of lives. Martinez even forwarded Jack a message from a planetary governor thanking him for humanizing Earth's reputation. I think they meant that literally, she wrote in her message. Jack responded with a selfie of him holding up a mug labeled Galactic Threat Level, mild. Eventually, the council requested one last formal statement to officially close the case. Back in the same hall where it all began, Jack took the stage again, this time with fewer gasps, fewer panicked glances, and far more note-taking. He didn't use slides. He just stood there and said, yeah, we heal fast. We get sick. We get better. Sometimes we get stronger. That's what humans do. He paused, letting the silence settle. We aren't built for perfection. We're built to survive. You've got synthetic tissues. We've got inflammation. You have biomechanical repair units. We've got duct tape and stubbornness. And when all else fails, coffee. The room chuckled. Even General Blurp, sitting uncontained for once, jiggled slightly with amusement. We're not a danger, Jack said, his voice softer now. We're just weird, but weird's not a crime. A round of cautious applause followed, then real applause. Tentacles clapped, pseudopods wriggled, and one being lit up like a birthday candle in celebration. Martinez, watching from the back, finally allowed herself a genuine smile. Afterward, Jack rejoined Lynn on the hospital rooftop, one of the few quiet spots left in New Singapore General. They sat on folding chairs, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs. Think they're finally over it? Lynn asked. Probably not, Jack said. But now they're curious instead of terrified. Better than nothing. They sat in silence for a moment. Think we could cause another interplanetary incident? Easily, Jack replied. But let's give it a week. Lynn sipped her coffee. Agreed. Let the universe breathe before we show them how humans handle concussions.